The story begins with Baki. After barely surviving a fight with the strongest man on Earth, Baki goes in for a full-body checkup. The doctors want to make sure he's still in one piece. When Dr. Shinogi looks at Baki's brain scans, his jaw nearly hits the floor. He immediately calls over a neuroscientist, Dr. Mogi, because what he's seeing just doesn't make sense. Baki's brain doesn't look human. It looks straight-up demonic. Shinogi tells Mogi that Baki's brain folds and patterns resemble something out of a horror movie. He even suspects that this demon brain might be why Baki is the way he is, just like his father, Yujiro. But for now, that's just a theory, and Mogi is dying to research it further. Even as a scientist, he can't believe he's looking at a human brain. In fact, he refuses to believe it's human at all. Meanwhile, across Tokyo, in a quiet park, something terrifying happens. Thousands of rats suddenly freak out and start running in a massive swarm. Why? Because they've sensed something way scarier than a cat. It's Baki Hanma just casually walking in the park. Somewhere else, Baki's girlfriend, Kozue, wakes up from a weird dream. She was remembering Muhammad Ali Jr.'s once handsome face, the face that completely lost its confidence after getting beat down by Baki. Now, she starts wondering, did I make the wrong choice siding with him back then? She remembers when Ali Jr. lost and started crying like a sad puppy, and she hugged him out of pure sympathy. He asked her why she did that. Her answer? I did it out of love, like a mother would. Yeah, ouch. That was the moment Ali Jr. realized the hard truth. Kozue wasn't in love with him. She basically just mom-zoned him. Feeling betrayed, he walked away, completely over it. The next day, Kozue runs into Baki on the way to school. They joke around and casually chat like old friends, as if none of that drama ever happened. Later that day, Baki goes out for a walk in the city. Unfortunately for some dumb thugs, they pick the worst possible guy to try and rob. The moment they realize who they're messing with, their souls nearly leave their bodies. Before Baki can accidentally end their careers, a man named Kiritagawa shows up to stop him. He tells the thugs they should be thanking their lucky stars for walking away unharmed. The thugs, finally realizing they were about to get deleted from existence, sprint away. They head to a coffee shop, and that's when Kiritagawa drops a bombshell. Baki's fight with Yujiro is coming soon. He reminds Baki that Yujiro killed his mother, and if Baki wants revenge, he has to be ready, even if it means killing his own father. Baki, deep in thought, remembers the last time he fought Yujiro, 5 years ago, when he got completely destroyed. He still isn't sure if he's strong enough to beat him now. But what Baki struggles with even more is whether Yujiro is the only one to blame for his mother's death. Because his mother, Emi Akazawa, wasn't exactly innocent either. Baki explains why he doesn't fully blame Yujiro alone. His mother chose this life. Emi was originally with a rich man, living a comfortable life. But the moment she met Yujiro Hanma, the ultimate alpha male, she threw all that away. She basically cheated on her husband to be with Yujiro, and Yujiro made things easy for her by killing the guy. Yujiro saw that Emi loved violence and bloodshed, so he married her and made sure she became the mother of his child. But here's the thing. Emi never cared about Baki as a son. She only raised him as a warrior, hoping it would make Yujiro love her. To her, Baki was just a gift for Yujiro. Yujiro, on the other hand, didn't care about Emi at all. He only wanted a son strong enough to fight him without holding back. He even told Emi that if Baki wasn't good enough, then she was worthless too. That drove her insane, and soon, she started abusing Baki, blaming him for not being strong enough to win Yujiro's approval. Baki trained as hard as he could, desperately trying to earn his mother's love. But in the end, it wasn't enough. She still died, and he still felt weak. Kiritagawa respects Emi's insane way of living, but tells Baki that it's time to stop living for his mother's approval. He says Baki's life is just as important as hers was. Baki shouldn't waste it trying to please his dead mother or his inhuman father. Instead, he should live for himself. But Baki shakes his head. This fight isn't about revenge, it's about purpose. He tells Kiritagawa that when Yujiro hit him, he didn't just feel pain, he heard the voice of an angel. That moment made him realize just how far beneath Yujiro he still was. Then he remembers the night Yujiro almost killed him. That night, Emi did something unexpected. She punched Yujiro to stop him. She challenged the strongest man on Earth to save Baki's life, and she died for it. That's why Baki feels the need to fight, not for revenge, not to prove anything, but to repay his mother's final act of love. To become the absolute strongest, Baki knows he must surpass everyone. He finally makes Kiritagawa understand why he needs to fight Yujiro, not for revenge, but to honor his mother's love. Meanwhile, at a military facility, Yujiro is looking for some fun. He challenges Biscuit Oliva, the strongest man in the United States, to a fight, just because he feels like it. For this fight, Yujiro actually puts on boxing gloves, getting ready to duel Oliva. Before the fight starts, Biscuit asks Yujiro how he feels about Baki surviving against the strongest creature in history. Yujiro surprisingly admits that he's somewhat proud of the weakling he calls a son, because Baki actually made that prehistoric beast use martial arts. The fight begins, and just as expected, Yujiro toys with the strongest man in America, making him look like a beginner. On the other side of the world, Japan's Prime Minister visits Tokugawa for advice. The Prime Minister confesses that the weight of running Japan is crushing him, sometimes making him regret ever taking the job. To ease his burden, Tokugawa casually hands him a ridiculous amount of money, but in return, he asks for a favor. Later, the Prime Minister meets with the Minister of Defense, relaying Tokugawa's request. Japan should unofficially allow the fight between Baki and Yujiro to happen. The Prime Minister doesn't seem to understand who Yujiro really is, so the Defense Minister gives him a reality check. He explains that Yujiro isn't just strong, he's an unstoppable force. No army, no weapons, not even missiles would be enough to stop him. He reminds the Prime Minister about a past incident where Yujiro attacked the former Prime Minister and then effortlessly took down an entire squad of fully armed riot police. By himself. To prevent mass panic, the government covered up the event. That's how dangerous Yujiro is. His existence alone could shake the country. Shocked, the Prime Minister asks if Yujiro could be taken out with a sniper, but he quickly learns that no one is stupid enough to even try. Instead, Japan's best move is to stay on Yujiro's good side, treating him like their ultimate secret weapon against other nations. One of the Prime Minister's assistants chimes in, making some philosophical comment about how if any politician, artist, or soldier had Yujiro's strength, they would have used it to achieve their dreams, just like Yujiro did. Honestly, no one really gets what this guy's talking about, but politicians rarely make sense anyway, so let's just move on. Meanwhile, Captain Stridham is busy training his soldiers in martial arts. He spars with one of them and tells him to attack with full intent, to kill. Because when it comes to real combat, hesitation means death. Every soldier steps up to fight Captain Stridham, but they all get knocked out instantly. After finishing them off, he gives them another lesson in martial arts before heading back to his warehouse. There, he starts crafting a weapon, something that might actually help him stand a chance against monsters like Yujiro. Of course, this isn't just for himself. Yujiro has given him an ultimatum. If Stridham doesn't kill him within a year, he'll end his treaty with the United States. While Stridham is training, Yujiro pays him a visit, not to fight, just to mock him for being as weak as ever. Stridham looks for an opening to attack by surprise, but it doesn't take long for him to realize he's nowhere near ready. Meanwhile, Baki is in his training room, drenched in sweat, pushing himself to his limits. In his mind, he imagines his opponent, Yujiro Hanma himself, and starts a full-on battle with the illusion, Sats. The fight is so intense that the shockwaves from Baki's training are felt across Tokyo, making people think there's been an earthquake. But even in his imagination, Baki loses against Yujiro. Later, Yujiro visits Tokugawa and tells him he should get a checkup. He's getting old. Tokugawa thanks him for the concern, but knows it's just small talk. He asks Yujiro to cut to the chase. Why is he really here? Yujiro, for no reason at all, gets mad and accidentally knocks Tokugawa unconscious using telekinesis. Yeah, telekinesis. After leaving, Yujiro reveals that he's gained a new ability. He can now see people's weaknesses just by looking at them. Meanwhile, Retsu Kaio walks into a random boxing gym and tries to join as a member, but the coach takes one look at him and rejects him because he's missing a leg. Retsu doesn't argue. He simply walks up to a sandbag and destroys it with a single punch. Back at the hospital, Tokugawa wakes up after being knocked out by Yujiro. Dr. Shinogi visits him and suggests that he stay and rest for a while. Somewhere else, a new star is rising in the MMA world. Akio Mani, the super welterweight champion, has gained nationwide fame for winning all his pro fights with first-round knockouts. Journalists from everywhere rush to his gym, eager to interview the undefeated fighter. During an interview, a journalist asks Akio Mani what his future plans are. Akio confidently replies that for now he's just focused on fighting. After the interview, Akio returns to his training and notices the completely destroyed sandbag, the one Retsu punched earlier. Curious, he asks around and learns about Retsu Kaio. Intrigued, Akio seeks him out at the gym. When he finally meets Retsu, Akio immediately wants to spar with him, but Retsu refuses, saying Akio is too weak to be worth his time. Instead of being discouraged, Akio gets even more interested and eagerly puts on his boxing gloves. Retsu finally steps into the ring, ready to humble the MMA champion. Before the match starts, Retsu tells Akio that he'll show him the true kung fu hidden within boxing. Akio hesitates for a moment, then throws the first punch, but in the blink of an eye, Retsu knocks him out cold. The entire gym falls into silence. Even the coach is stunned. He notices Retsu meditating and doesn't like it, telling him to do proper boxing training instead. But Retsu stands firm, claiming his own training method is superior. To prove it, he challenges the coach to bring in any boxer. If Retsu loses, he'll give up his ways and train like a proper boxer. Before the coach can respond, Akio steps in and acknowledges Retsu as the winner. But he warns him, his arrogance might turn the entire boxing world against him, and that won't end well. Meanwhile, at the Shinshinkai headquarters, Katsumi Orochi is practicing his karate, against a plastic bag. He knocks it around the room when suddenly, Baki jumps in through the window and starts beating up the bag too. Seeing Baki appear so suddenly, Katsumi asks why he's there. Baki explains that he just came to check on him. He wanted to see how the man who got his arm eaten by Pickle was holding up. Katsumi, however, isn't dwelling on his loss. He tells Baki that instead of thinking about what he lost, he focuses on what he can gain. He's been developing a new technique to make himself even stronger. Baki, impressed by Katsumi's mindset, relates to him. They're both sons of legendary fighters trying to surpass their limits. As they go back to messing around with the plastic bag, Katsumi mentions that he's heard Baki is about to fight Yujiro. Baki confirms it, saying that even though he no longer hates his father, he's still determined to fight him. To prove his progress, Baki demonstrates his improved skill, cutting the plastic bag in half without even moving his legs. Katsumi is amazed but tells Baki that since Yujiro is his father, there's no real reason to fight him. Meanwhile, Dr. Shinogi shows Tokugawa how badly his lungs have been damaged. At the same time, Baki learns from Katsumi that the legendary kung fu master Retsu Kaio has chosen to pursue boxing. Katsumi explains that Retsu is determined to climb the ranks and become a boxing champion, only using kung fu. Katsumi knows that even though kung fu is an ancient martial art, it won't be easy to use in boxing since many of its moves are against the rules. Plus, modern boxing has evolved significantly, so Retsu might struggle to adapt. After hearing all this, Baki thinks Retsu is an idiot for getting involved in something so pointless. The next morning, while all the boxers are training, Retsu continues meditating using his traditional method. The coach doesn't like it and forces Retsu into the ring to spar with a former military soldier. As the match begins, Retsu analyzes his opponent's talent and even takes the first hit to measure his strength. After realizing that his opponent is nothing special, Retsu immediately knocks him out with a single hit to the skull. Meanwhile, Yujiro goes out to eat at a restaurant with Captain Stridum and learns something about Baki that infuriates him. At the restaurant, Yujiro asks Stridum for details and finds out that when Stridum visited Baki, Baki said he wanted to have a peaceful meal with his father. Since that sounds normal for a father and son, Stridum dismissed it, saying that Baki and Yujiro aren't normal. But Baki kept insisting. He only wanted to have a simple father-son moment. Stridum made it clear that two alpha males can't share a wholesome moment. But Baki still dreamed of seeing Yujiro cook rice for him. Hearing all this, Yujiro is furious. He bursts out of the restaurant in a rage. Meanwhile, Japan's Prime Minister privately meets with the President of the United States, who is not Barack Obama, to discuss a major upcoming event. Yujiro will be fighting Baki. The Prime Minister hopes for US support in handling this dangerous situation. However, one minister gets scared and suggests leaving them alone, since it's more of a family issue than a national crisis. Before the discussion can go further, the US president confidently states that he isn't afraid of Yujiro or Baki because he has a secret weapon, his guardian angel, Coal Dust, which he claims he can turn into diamonds with Yujiro's power. But before he can finish showing off, Yujiro storms into the meeting to humiliate him. Outside the building, all three elite security guards are already unconscious, beaten down by Yujiro. In fact, Yujiro knocked out every single person in the building just to get to the US president and Japan's prime minister. Yujiro is furious that the president was using him as a political tool to flex his power. He demands the president's right hand and pours coal dust into it. As the coal dust takes the shape of a crucifix, Yujiro forces the president to repeat the oath he made when he begged for Yujiro's friendship. Terrified, the president recites his original promise, including the part where he swore never to interfere in Yujiro's personal matters. Yujiro calls him out, asking why he's suddenly trying to meddle in his fight with Baki. The president nervously explains that a battle between Yujiro and Baki is like a war between two nations, which is why the politicians are getting involved. Yujiro laughs at their weakness and before leaving, warns them not to interfere with his family again. At Japan's international airport, a world-famous fight promoter named Kaiser arrives. He's looking to set up a big fight, but he doesn't reveal who he wants to challenge. Meanwhile, Retsu continues training at the gym, remaining perfectly still in meditation for 2 hours. Frustrated, the coach calls the chairman, hoping he'll knock some sense into Retsu, but even the chairman doesn't know what to do with him. Kaiser enters the gym and immediately stands beside Retsu, admiring his beauty. Yes, really. After staring for a while, he asks if he can talk to Retsu, but Retsu yells at him for interrupting his training. Kaiser apologizes and politely asks if Retsu can do him a favor by showing him his strength. Retsu agrees, puts on a boxing glove, and casually punches the air, so hard that his glove completely tears apart. Everyone at the gym, including Kaiser, is shocked. Kaiser declares that ripping a boxing glove is a declaration of war between kung fu and boxing. He then comes up with a bold idea. He wants to set up a fight between Retsu and the world's strongest boxer to finally decide which martial art is superior. Kaiser envisions the epic showdown, imagining how the whole world will witness a kung fu master go against the greatest boxer ever. To make it happen, he invites Retsu to the United States. Meanwhile, Baki continues training alone, cooking food for himself. As he eats, he shows signs of loneliness, having no real family connection. He starts talking to himself, imagining Yujiro sitting beside him, discussing food. His imaginary father-son conversation quickly turns into an argument, which leads to an imaginary fight. But after a while, Baki gets bored of role-playing alone and decides to go to school for a change. As Baki gets ready for school, Kozue shows up at his house, suspecting he lives with someone, like every other girlfriend in the world would. They walk to school together, and while Baki acts carefree, he's actually pretty depressed inside. After school, Baki resumes training. While meditating, he notices a cockroach and starts admiring its adaptability. He wishes he could be like a cockroach, capable of surviving any situation. Taking inspiration, Baki mimics its unique traits and alters his body internally, making it as fluid and flexible as a cockroach. Thanks to this bizarre adaptation, his fighting speed increases drastically, making him stronger than ever before. Meanwhile, Kaiser takes Retsu to the legendary city of Las Vegas. But the moment Retsu sees the flashy streets, he immediately hates it, calling it a fake city that tries to contain everything in one place. He even compares Las Vegas to shady fighting styles that pretend to be real martial arts like Kung Fu. Kaiser doesn't care about Retsu's rant and tells him to focus on why he's here. They go to watch a former boxing champion win a big match. Seizing the moment, Kaiser interrupts the event and introduces Retsu to the crowd. Kaiser thanks Retsu for stepping into the ring and praises him for being cooperative. Meanwhile, Andre, the reigning champion, is confused and asks Kaiser why he's stealing his spotlight. Yanin? Kaiser lies and tells Andre that he had to call out Retsu because Retsu insults his entire existence. Of course, this was just a setup to trick Andre into fighting Retsu, and luckily, Andre takes the bait. Retsu even adds fuel to the fire, calling Andre a big brute with no brains, making Andre furious. Before the fight begins, Kaiser decides to showcase Retsu's strength to hype up the audience. But before Retsu can even break some cement blocks, Andre steps in and demonstrates his own karate skills instead. Retsu still takes his turn and smashes the cement block with such precision that it turns into dust. The crowd is now completely fired up, and Kaiser officially announces the match between Retsu and Andre. A press conference is held about the match, and reporters ask Retsu about his history as a fighter. Retsu happily shares his journey but admits that he has never officially fought anyone. The journalists then ask about his unofficial fights, but Retsu struggles to explain, as those battles were for survival, not entertainment. Seeing that Retsu isn't great at answering, they turn to Kaiser, asking him about the fight rules. Kaiser keeps it simple. They'll fight using only their fists, making it a battle of raw strength. He hypes it up as a war between two beasts and invites the world to witness the match. And later at the hotel, Retsu's gym coach calls him disrespectful for challenging a former champion like Andre. The coach doubts Retsu's chances, so to prove a point, he throws a punch at him. Retsu doesn't even bother dodging, and the coach's hand dislocates on impact, as if he hit a steel wall. Retsu calmly fixes his hand and explains that he's not trying to disrespect boxing. He only wants to showcase Kung Fu to the world. Finally, the exhibition match begins, and Retsu steps into the ring. Before the fight, Andre glares at him angrily and even tries to kick him to entertain the crowd. Once the match starts, Andre moves around like a monkey, confusing everyone. Retsu, unimpressed, goes to the corner and decides not to fight. But Andre won't let him off so easily. He rushes in to attack anyway. Without hesitation, Retsu unleashes rapid punches, finishing Andre in an instant by smashing his face in. After the fight, Kaiser wins a fortune and congratulates Retsu for becoming the most famous Chinese fighter in the US. Since millions of Americans saw Retsu's incredible technique live, it's no surprise he's a sensational figure now. The announcer asks Retsu about his fighting style, and he simply says he was demonstrating the power of Kung Fu. As for his final blow, he calls it the no-inch punch. Retsu clarifies that he wasn't showboating. He actually wants to fight a stronger opponent next. Because of this statement, Kaiser believes Retsu has made the entire world his enemy, and soon, monsters will come after him. Sitting on a mountain of cash, Kaiser tells Retsu to take whatever he wants since he earned it. But Retsu finds his attitude disrespectful and warns him that if he does that again, he'll shatter his legs. Realizing Retsu isn't joking, Kaiser hands him the money properly this time. Back at Baki's house, his hair suddenly rises, like Goku's, and he instantly realizes that Yujiro is nearby. Without thinking, Baki makes 2 cups of coffee, one for himself and one for his father. Before he can even process what's happening, Yujiro is already inside his house. Baki sits down, handing Yujiro the coffee. He asks why Yujiro suddenly showed up, but Yujiro says nothing at first. He just takes a sip of coffee. Then he asks Baki, "Is this what you wanted? A father and son sitting together?" Baki hesitates, then nods. He admits that this is what he's wanted for years. He confesses that he has always feared Yujiro, the strongest man alive, and still does. But at the same time, he respects and despises him. Yujiro asks Baki about the time of their fight, and Baki says that it should start naturally, like a petty family argument over dinner. He dreams of having a normal father-son fight inside their house. Yujiro agrees to humor him and insults Baki's coffee, calling it bizarre. But instead of arguing, Baki apologizes for serving bad coffee, throwing Yujiro completely off guard. Then Baki drops the act and says that if Yujiro wants to fight, the reason must be real. He then makes another request. He asks Yujiro to make him a proper cup of coffee. Yujiro stands up and makes it clear. He will only make coffee if Baki forces him to. To prove his point, Yujiro destroys the table and storms out, knowing that Baki isn't strong enough yet. As Yujiro leaves, Baki watches him go, realizing that he's this close to making their relationship feel normal. He tells Yujiro that next time, he should close the door gently when leaving. Despite everything, Baki was too afraid to ask Yujiro to make coffee, but he hopes to get another chance soon. Meanwhile, in the streets of Tokyo, another chain smoker, Shiba, approaches Baki demanding a fight. He apologizes for the sudden challenge, admitting he has no real reason for wanting to fight. Baki accepts anyway and knocks him out instantly. Locks. After regaining consciousness, Shiba reveals that Hanayama sent him to fight Baki for no reason at all. He quickly gets up, acknowledging Baki's strength, but thinks Baki is too soft. Baki smirks and promises that next time he won't hold back. We'll cover everything in the next part. Show your support and come back in the next video.